Welcome to Berlin, a city that's vibrant, historic, and full of surprises. We spent 7 days here exploring iconic landmarks, uncovering hidden gems, and diving deep into Berlin's fascinating and dark history. From walking through World War II bunkers to experiencing one of the world's biggest marathons, discovering Berlin's street art scene, and seeing the city light up during the Festival of Lights, we packed a lot into the trip. And best of all, we got to explore with one of our best friends. Of course, no visit to Berlin would be complete without amazing foods and checking out spots like the legendary Tempelhof Airport. So join us as we take you through the best of Berlin. We have made it to Berlin, Germany's capital, and I'm so excited to be here. We're going to be here for 7 days, and our friend Sophie's going to be joining us starting tomorrow, which I'm pumped about.
And exploring the capital is going to be a lot of fun. There's also a lot of history here. We probably won't go too much in depth, maybe just scratch the surface of things we learned or different experiences, but there's plenty of videos out there that would do the history a lot more justice than we can. So we're just going to enjoy the capital.
We made it to Dead Chicken Alley, which is an alley famous for vibrant street work and alternative culture. So it's just a small little alleyway that has a bunch of murals, a bunch of different things on the wall, some art studios. It's a really neat place to check out. It's kind of hidden in the streets, but it's a pretty popular area.
This was our initial understanding, but later in the video we take a tour into Berlin's alternative culture, giving us new perspectives on areas we explored without a guide. Something you won't want to miss.
So in this alleyway there's also two museums. One's the Anne Frank Museum and one is the one that we're in right now, which talks about this guy who will flash up. I don't know how to say his name, but he employed blind and visually impaired Jews and tried to protect them during World War II. He also hid some of the Jews in different areas as well. So it's a really interesting museum that I had no idea about this person or what he did. It was interesting to learn about and it was free, so that's always a plus. Up next, we're making a quick stop at Museum Island to see the Berlin Cathedral. We're probably gonna come back later in the week, but we wanted to quickly see this because Sophie's already seen it, so we didn't want to, make her see it again. So we're gonna go check out the Berlin Cathedral.
The Berlin Cathedral is probably one of the most stunning buildings I've ever seen, and I'm not saying this lightly. It has gold writing on it, the sun's hitting it just perfectly. It has nice Corinthian columns, there's even painting on it. There's just a lot of pull factors here, and I've seen people up top, so we're gonna go inside, check it out, hopefully get to the top, but I'm just excited because I love a good building, and this thing has it all. So that door is closed because that means we cannot get up. We missed the last sightseeing for today, but we have something else planned we're gonna head to now. We made it to our next stop, the Brandenburg Gate, and this actually wasn't where we were heading. We saw it in a distance, we decided to walk towards it, and let me tell you, the way here was absolutely stunning. There is a plethora of amazing buildings. This whole strip that we're on is just gorgeous, and as you can probably see by the crowd, there's a lot going on here. And that's because we found out there's actually a marathon happening tomorrow, and this place is popping.
Not only a marathon, the 50th anniversary of the marathon, which is crazy. And this gate has a lot of history to it. And during the Cold War, it was a symbol of division, but now it stands as a symbol of reunification and freedom. And we're also here the same week that they celebrate the reunification of Germany on October 3rd. So we came here when there's a lot of events going on.
But now we're actually gonna head to where we were trying to go.
We made it to the Topography of Terror, which is the actual site where the Nazis regime had their institutions of terror. We're going to try to go inside the museum and hopefully it stays open for a couple more hours, and then there's an outside part too. So we're going to go learn about the institutions of terror.
This free museum documents the rise of the Nazi regime, the mechanics of oppression, and the devastating consequences of their policies. Through photos, artifacts, and detailed exhibits, it serves as a somber reminder of the atrocities committed and the importance of remembering history to prevent its repetition. There's also a QR code you can scan that plays audio over the different exhibits, so make sure to bring some headphones and expect to spend about 2 to 3 hours here.
We just got done with the inside part of the museum, which was very interesting, and it gave a lot more background information about the Holocaust and World War II, and a lot of things that we didn't really know about, like specific leaders and different tactics that they used and the different terrors that they put on the people, not in just Germany, but all over. And it just gave a bigger picture of what was going on, because a lot of times we focus on like the concentration camps, but there were so many other terrible things that they were doing too that we just haven't really learned about. So there's a lot of pictures and information about that.
Outside the museum, you'll find a preserved section of the Berlin Wall along with nearby timeline of events. Since the area was closing during our first visit, we made sure to return later in the week to spend the proper time on this exhibit. The timeline features panels documenting the rise of the Third Reich, the propaganda used, and the operations of the Gestapo and SS, highlighting their role in persecution, oppression, and genocide. The preserved wall itself serves as a powerful reminder of Berlin's more recent division, a topic we'll touch upon later in the video.
Honestly, just like some of the stuff we saw today makes me like really interested to explore more of the city, because we're going to be here for 6 more days.
There's going to be a lot to see and do and eat, because the food scene here is pretty nice. But right now, it's time to go get some rest before we see Sophie tomorrow. We're back at it again, day 2 in Berlin.
And this place is huge. I don't even think we're gonna be able to scratch the surface even in 7 days.
And I'm realizing how like little I know about Berlin and the history and everything, so we're gonna start today off by going to a tour of the underground bunkers from World War II. We made it to where our tour starts of the World War II bunker, and we're not quite sure what exactly this tour is gonna all include, but it's 90 minutes, no filmings allowed or pictures, so we're gonna say bye to you guys now, and then we'll share what we learned when we come back. We just got done with the bunker tour and it was super interesting. I'm really glad that we did it because it taught us a lot about what life was like in Berlin during the war and how these bunkers functioned, and how a lot of the bunkers weren't even like supposed to be bunkers. There was no fortification with cement and whatnot, and it just talked a lot about what they were used for, and you actually got to go down into the bunker and they saw like the original signage, and they talked about the paint that they used, and it's like glow in the dark paint because they didn't have any generators, so when the electric went out it was just dark, except they had this paint that glowed, which was interesting to see.
They also talked about one of the bunkers that like when the Allies took over, they started like demilitarizing Berlin, and one of the bunkers that we're actually on our way to right now, they blew up half of it, assuming that the other half would eventually fall over time, but that didn't happen. They started like to put a bunch of the rubble from Berlin over to what is called now like a rubble hill, and so we're actually heading there. It's important to learn a lot about the city that we're exploring, so we typically like to do a lot of like the touristy stuff just so we learn and have like a good foundation as we continue to explore.
So we just made it up here, and honestly you would not know that this was a bunker. Like, it looks just like a park, and there's graffiti everywhere, there's some artwork, and it's just hard to believe that this was used as a bunker. Like, below our feet is a bunker, and it makes you think like, where else are all these bunkers? Because they're throughout the city. There's bunkers just everywhere, and you just don't know what you're walking on sometimes. But it gives you a really good view of the city up here, and I think we're gonna go to the other side and see what's on the other side. Being up there was a really cool spot to see the city, but we just got word that Sophie and her friend Pia have gotten really close to Berlin, so we have to go catch a train so we can go see her. We're not quite sure what we're gonna do for the rest of the day, but I'm sure it will be a great time. I'm really enjoying Berlin and all that it has to offer. There's a lot going on here. We got Sophie, and now we're gonna go check out the marathon race and see some runners finish. Woo! Now, we weren't planning on the marathon being a highlight of our visit to Berlin, but it was such a fun and energetic time. And it's not just any marathon, it's one of the 6 most prestigious marathons in the world, so the atmosphere was unreal. And after watching all the runners go by, we got a little hungry, so... For lunch, we have Berlin's national dish, Doner Kebab. Did I say it right? Yeah. A Doner Kebab is a Turkish-German street food icon, believed to have been introduced in Berlin in the 1970s by a Turkish immigrant who popularized doner into a sandwich-style format, making it portable and perfect for on-the-go eating, and today it's one of Berlin's favorite and affordable street foods. Ooh, crunchy. That's delicious. It's like a sandwich kebab. 10 out of 10. The rest of the afternoon was spent walking around Tiergarten catching up with friends. Along the way we saw famous landmarks like the Victory Column, a monument meant to commemorate Germany's victory against Denmark, Austria, and France. Next we came across the Bellevue Palace, which is the official residence of the president since 1994, and saw the Grand Duke Square. There's also this government office building which has a dome you can climb up if you make your reservations early enough, which we did not, but we were able to see runners go under the Brandenburg Gate to the finish line. We then made our way to Holzmarkt 25, a unique cultural and creative hub in Berlin located on the Spree River. It's home to bars, cafes, art studios, and event spaces, all built with a rustic, eco-friendly aesthetic. We enjoyed some drinks by the river and a photo shoot before calling it a night. So we made it for our first stop of the day. We had a nice slow morning. Me and Sophie went on a run, but we made it to Markthalle Neun, which was actually built in 1891. During World War II, it got damaged, but it was repaired pretty quickly. Then it went into disrepair, and then in, I think 2011, they reopened it, and they have a bunch of stalls with food options. So this is where we came for lunch, and it's a really cool spot. I went to a Turkish place, and I got a bunch of different things. I'm not quite sure what they were, and it came with bread, and I can't wait to eat it. I'm just gonna do one. Yep. It's good.
Good decision.
Good decision. I'm so excited because there's Brussels sprouts, and I haven't seen a Brussels sprout in a long time, and I love Brussels sprouts.
And I got the Bavarian mac and cheese, and this thing is loaded. There's chives, pepper, a lot of pepper actually, mac and cheese, and some like fried onions on it. And that's everything I wanted. It was great. We walked in here. I'm gonna get mac and cheese. We did a lap, and I still got mac and cheese. I'm a happy person.
Berlin's pretty dope. There's all these little vintage stores down the street, and there's cool architecture, and there's churches everywhere. It's a really neat city. I enjoy it. We made it to our next spot, the Tempelhof Airport Park, which is a really huge park in Berlin that opened up in 2010 after the airport closed in 2008. So it was a big old airport, and now you can even go like on the tarmac and walk around, and there's still old parts of the airport that are still up that you can see. So it's kind of cool. Like, we're walking on an airport, which is wild, and there's a ton of history here. There's a ton of nature. It's a beautiful day. So I'm gonna explore with my good friend Sophie and Brandon.
I will say this park is pretty unique, and it almost feels like I shouldn't be on here and walking on tarmac, but here we are. And it offers some pretty like good views of the city. We can see some of the iconic buildings, and yeah, kind of just showing around. It's pretty fun.
It's giant. Like, we're trying to get to the hangars because you can still go there, but it's so far away.
We got a lot of walking to do, and it's a little windy.
That park was really cool, and I feel like we could have spent a whole day there, like, just there. You could rent bikes, bring a kite, a picnic, and there's even a grill spot too that you can do. So much history, and now after all that walking, and me and Sophie running, we're gonna go treat ourselves to some beer at this place called the, what is it?
Muted Horn.
The Muted Horn, and it has craft beers.
Yeah.
And they have some wild flavors. And Brandon's not gonna be with us, so we'll have to get extra.
It's a Mexican hot chocolate stout. It smells chocolatey.
Try it. try it.
Oh, that's really good.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, it's like spicy and chocolatey. You should try it, Becky. I really like. Oh, you don't like it?
No, it's good. It's really smooth.
You don't like stout. It's a Mexican hot chocolate stout.
Oh yeah, that's why. I forgot what I was drinking. I like the aftertaste. Like right now it tastes like chocolate and I like that. It's pretty good. I give it a solid. I'm so subjective because I don't like beers very much. I give it 10 out of 10. And I got a rhubarb custard sour beer. It smells fruity. Whoa. They're all just so weird. Like they don't taste like beers. You know what I mean? Like they just taste like a soda. Like a cream soda.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, it's really good. Cheers.
Gross.
Peace out, muted horn.
Good raining afternoon from day 4 of exploring Berlin. We just finished our brunch and the food scene here is incredible. So many options, very fair pricing for like what we've seen on our travels. And we just been enjoying time with Sophie, kicking it off a little bit off camera. Now we're back to exploring.
Yeah, and since it's raining out today and there's a ton of museums in Berlin, we're gonna go to a museum and maybe check out some of the old checkpoints of the Berlin Wall. But we're gonna go try and learn a little bit more about Berlin and the history and take in a nice rainy, kind of gloomy day. We just got done going through the museum, and I can't say the German name, but it translates to the Palace of Tears, and it was one of the checkpoints at the Berlin Wall, and it gave a lot of the history of like what happened at that checkpoint and gave a lot of stories of like the people who were living during that time. It's a very interesting museum.
Just like bizarre how overnight it just divided a city in half, and then like people couldn't see like loved ones, like the different stories about like finding out on the radio that they couldn't go back. Glad we got to learn more about sort of what happened. It was really like apparent like through like the different propagandas. They had like one video where they show like the east and the west side and how they broke it down.
One thing about Berlin is that many of the museums are free, which gives you a lot of the city's history, covering topics like World War II, the Berlin Wall, and the Cold War. As we explored more of the city, we visited the Memorial to the Murdered Jews of Europe, a site dedicated to honoring the Jewish victims of the Holocaust. Later, we revisited the Topography of Terror Museum before heading to Checkpoint Charlie, the main border crossing during the Cold War for diplomats, journalists, and non-German visitors between American-controlled West Berlin and Soviet-controlled East Berlin. Nearby is also the Checkpoint Charlie Museum, which documents the history of the Berlin Wall, the checkpoint itself, and the many daring escape attempts from East to West Berlin. In order to avoid turning this video into a food tour, we spent some time walking before finding some of the best tacos we've had in Europe to end the night.
Welcome to day 5 of exploring Berlin. Today we signed up for a free walking tour of the graffiti around the city, which I'm actually really interested in because there's like street art everywhere. So hopefully they give us some background information, take us up to some cool spots. It's supposed to be like a alternative walking tour to like opposed to like the historical sites. It's not raining, it's a brisk fall day, and I'm pumped. Let's go! Tour starting in East Berlin, and we're actually taking like the trams and public transportation on the walking tour, which is kind of interesting because usually they don't do that, so we get to see more. But they're taking us to East Berlin, and then we're gonna go to West Berlin and just see it all.
Our first stop is the Dead Chicken Alley. This narrow, vibrant alleyway is filled with graffiti, street art, and history. Named after the punk band Dead Chickens, these buildings were once abandoned and heavily destroyed after World War II and became a haven for squatters, artists, and activists during the Cold War period. It became a hotspot for creatives and was established as an independent art collective, housing galleries, workshops, and cultural spaces.
Built in 1846 as a hospital. It's actually amazing to survive the Second World War because Berlin was heavily bombed. Around about 80% was at least partially destroyed in the wartime. But the reason why this building was saved is because when they were flying over, they would know where to drop the bombs, used as a point of orientation. Also, in a wartime, you try not bomb hospitals because this is what's known as a war crime, and it's they're not deemed very cool. So, built in 1846, it ran until 1970, where then it got shut down. Then local activist groups began occupying, squatting in the west wing of the building. It used to be really popular here in Berlin because there were many abandoned buildings. But through the trees over here, this building, we're going to take a walk past in a minute, this is called the Georg von Rauch House, and it's been a squat house since 1973.
We just finished up the walking tour, and I think it's something I'll always recommend doing in a city. Today was like the first time that we've been here where you start to see like how the Berlin Wall was like incorporated, or just like seeing like the day-to-day life throughout the different areas we'll visit. Like one month we'll be in the east and we just go to the west, and it was just kind of like mind-blowing because that was like everyday life. And we learned a lot about like some different districts, the culture there, art influence, music influence. And it was just kind of like a fun alternative tour. That's not like the traditional tours that you might do of like old city centers and like some cities. And yeah, it's kind of like part of our day. And it ended near like another tourist attraction, which we're actually heading to right now.
Which is the East Side Gallery, which has 1.3 kilometers of the Berlin Wall that's still up, which is like the longest section that's still standing today. And it's one of the world's largest open air art galleries, and there's a bunch of artists who have painted murals on one side of the Berlin Wall that you can walk along and see, and it has the famous fraternal kiss on there that you can see as well. And it gives a lot of information along the wall and little plaques, and teaches you kind of about like the art and the history. A nice place to learn about the art and walk around and do the history. Day 6 took us outside the city center to a unique street art spot, Teufelsberg. This tower sits upon a man-made hill built from World War II rubble covering an unfinished Nazi military school. During the Cold War, the US used it as a secret listening station to spy on Soviet communications, but today you can enter the premise for 10 euros and explore. It still stands abandoned, offering eerie hallways to explore, but it's covered in colorful street art and has probably one of the best views of Berlin. Later that night, we headed back to Markthalle Neun for dinner as it was transformed into a street food extravaganza showcasing Berlin's diverse food scenes. It had amazing food and was a great way to end the day. On the last day, we went to what might be one of the coolest events ever, the Festival of Lights. Every year around the beginning of October, this free festival illuminates Berlin's streets, landmarks, and squares with over 90 illuminated artworks spread across more than 50 locations throughout the city. We started at the TV tower and then went past the cathedral to the Brandenburg Gate. With the main street closed down and music playing and people everywhere, it was a great way to end our time in Berlin. And dare I say, see it in a new light. Till next time, Berlin, we will be back.